Hello there. Today is November 14th and tonight it's supposed to get down to about 22. Since I don't heat the greenhouse, most of my lettuce and whatnot will probably get frozen tonight. So I figured I'd bring you along and show you what I need to do to shut the greenhouse down for the winter. These videos are brought to you by our Patreon contributors. Our top contributors are TrueAquaponics.com and GlassBottleOutlet.com. Thanks for your support. The deep water culture bed does act as my sump, so the water level slowly goes down in this over time as I lose water. It's about 1.5 inches too low right now. So before I get started and have to drain out my lines, I'm just gonna fill this up for a couple of hours while I do some of my other work. I like to take the pads out of the evaporative cooler. It's not really 100% necessary, but I will store them here, get them up out of the way. I actually throw them in my spare tank and it keeps the mice from getting into them. And I just throw these insulated panels into the openings. They help a little bit just to reduce some of the airflow coming through these aluminum vents. The sump well for the evaporative cooler is still filled with water, so I like to just open up the waistline and drain that out. There'll still be a little bit of water, about 1.5 feet below grade, but it won't freeze in there. The kale and the Swiss chard that I have in these beds will do fine through a couple of small frosts. The pepper I have in here, that will not make it. The tomatoes will probably get nipped up along closer to the plastic. Sometimes the whole plant comes out on the first frost. I haven't been caring for them for about a month. You can see that the tops just started curling over. I stopped tying them up because I knew the inevitable was coming. So I'm just going to spend some time and harvest any of the tomatoes that are ripe or nearly ripe and bring those up to the house, and we'll use those for the next few weeks. Anything that's left over, these green tomatoes, they're just going to go to waste. I don't do anything with the green tomatoes, and nobody really wants them. I think everybody has them at the end of the season. And then I harvested about 20 pounds, a little over 20 pounds of tomatoes. Most of them are red, a few green ones in here, and we'll probably make some sauce or something out of that. I have a ton of cherry tomatoes, so I'm just gonna take the whole thing off and save everything off of this. Some of them redden up and some of them will just go bad. I have a frost-proof hydrant in here, so the valve is actually way down underground. So once I turn it off, the water in the hydrant area will drain out, and then I can connect everything up and blow everything out through the open valve. I cobbled together this adapter that gets me to this 1/2-inch NPT fitting into my air hose. I can just connect that on, and that's what starts blowing out the line. I'm going to try to cover a few of these up just to protect them. I might stretch my season out by a week or so. The warmth in the bed should help save it a little bit. But just in case, I'm going to harvest a few of these so I have something up at the house to use.
Well, obviously we've had a frost in here. It's been about a week and a half. We've had a couple of cold nights. The water temperature has gone from about 58 degrees to 42 degrees, so it doesn't take very long of a few cold nights to drive the water temperatures down. And the first night that really got the temperature in here went down to about 22 or 23, and then a couple nights ago the temperatures were about 18 or 19 degrees, which really finished off just about everything else. So we're going to spend some time cleaning things up, getting it nice and cleared out, and then basically shut everything down for the rest of the season. On the back side of all these cherry tomatoes, I had left my strawberry plants over there, and they'll do fine. I'm just going to leave them over the winter in here, and they'll go dormant and then pop right back up in the spring. The remaining lettuce is still looking pretty good. I had covered some of that up, and that saved it from getting nipped too badly. Had a few on the edges that got a little frostbite, but for the most part I'll be able to harvest this for a few more weeks. The weather forecast shows it being a little bit warmer for at least the next week, so I should still be okay with this. The Swiss chard and the kale still look great. They can definitely handle some colder weather, so this should last a few more weeks too. Normally I would just cut the whole plant out, but my neighbor asked me to save some of the tomatoes for their chickens, and I figured I'd do that. A little extra food for them. I've done some experiments this year with growing onions in the deep water culture, and they actually did pretty well, and these are some of the ones that escaped my detection once they started hiding under the tomato plants. The mice have been busy nesting underneath the beds here. The styrofoam is from under the beds, so we'll have to make sure we start trapping them again. These 1-inch rafts just aren't quite good enough for doing tomatoes. I think next year I'm going to ramp it up to either 1.5 or 2-inch thick board.
Just a quick editor's note that these roots are looking pretty brown because the plants have been dead for a couple of weeks once I finally removed them.
Few rogue strawberries that have worked their way over here and rooted themselves in the bed, so we'll hold on to these. They'll grow fine next year. As a little self-promotion, even though these beds are filthy and filled with all kinds of debris now, you can still see the aeration system using the infusionators are still working great. I have done no maintenance whatsoever with these nozzles throughout the entire season, and they're still going without any interruption. I have a love-hate relationship with these clips. They're great in the spring for putting up the plants because they're fast, but in the winter they are horrible, and I don't want them in my compost. They do make some other styles that are supposed to be compostable. They still have some plastic in them for strength. I've seen some cornstarch ones too, and they tend to fall apart real fast.
It's now near the end of January. It's been about a month and a half since I originally recorded everything and realized I didn't record any outro. So here is the lettuce now. It's well frosted and dead, and on a nicer day when it warms up in here, I'll clean all this up. I do have that inline hot water heater running, which keeps the water at about 37 degrees or so, just enough to keep any of the piping from freezing up on a cold day. Electric heat is very expensive, and here in Connecticut we're actually the highest electric rates in the continental US, so we try to keep the electric usage down as much as possible. The fish are not fed during the winter. I might throw a little bit in once in a while, but they essentially just sit at the bottom of the tank and do their own thing until spring comes along. Surprisingly, I have a little bit of kale and Swiss chard that are still alive in the media beds. The mice seem to enjoy the tender parts of the kale, so we just leave that alone, and at some point I'll pull that out too. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you this spring.